Lady Louise Windsor spent her whole life avoiding the spotlight. No royal title, no princess label, just a quiet girl living an ordinary life. Then one announcement from King Charles changed everything overnight. The girl who chose to stay hidden has just stepped forward. But why now? And what does this really mean for the royal family? Join us as we uncover the full story. The royal decision that surprised everyone. It started with a trending name. Across social media platforms and royal news websites, the name Lady Louise Windsor began appearing everywhere. Alerts were sent, articles were shared. Millions of people who follow the British royal family started asking the same question at the same time. What was happening? The reports that emerged were clear. Lady Louise Windsor had accepted the HRH title and would now be recognized as a princess. The announcement was connected to King Charles III and had come through official royal channels. For many people, the reaction was immediate surprise. Lady Louise is not someone the public sees on the front pages every week. She is not photographed at celebrity events. She does not have a high-profile public role that puts her in the news on a regular basis. Yet here she was, suddenly at the center of one of the biggest royal stories in recent memory. To understand why this moment felt so significant, it helps to look at who Lady Louise Windsor actually is. She is the daughter of Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. She is a grandchild of the late Queen Elizabeth II. She is the niece of King Charles III. In other words, she has always been very close to the heart of the British monarchy. But closeness to the monarchy and visibility within it are two very different things. For most of her life, Lady Louise has lived away from the kind of attention that follows senior royals. She has been described by those who know the family as thoughtful, grounded, and private. So, when the news of a title change broke, the question on everyone's mind was the same. Why now? Why, after all these years of living quietly, had she chosen this moment to step forward? The answer to that question goes back much further than most people realize. In fact, it goes back more than 100 years to a royal rule that shaped the identity of Lady Louise Windsor long before she was even born. The royal rule that made her a princess from birth. To understand this story properly, you have to go back to the year 1917. That was the year King George V made a decision that would quietly shape the lives of royal family members for generations to come. At the time, the British royal family had a large number of relatives, and not all of them were closely connected to the crown. King George V wanted to create a clearer structure. He wanted to define exactly who would carry royal titles and who would not. The rule he established was straightforward. The grandchildren of a monarch through the male line would automatically have the right to be called prince or princess and to use the HRH title. This was not something they had to earn or apply for. It came to them simply by being born into the right branch of the family. Fast forward to the year 2003. Lady Louise Windsor was born to Prince Edward and Sophie. At that moment, under the rules set down by King George V, she became a princess. The title was hers. The HRH was hers. Everything was in place. Except the public never heard her called that. Instead, from her very first appearances in the public eye, she was known simply as Lady Louise Windsor. No princess, no HRH. Just a name that sounded more like that of an ordinary person than a member of the royal family. For years, many people simply accepted this without thinking too deeply about it. But royal watchers and those who follow palace tradition closely understood that something unusual was happening. A title that belonged to her by birth was sitting unused, waiting quietly in the background. This was not an accident. It was not an oversight. It was a deliberate choice, carefully made by the people who loved her most, and that choice came from a very specific place. The unusual choice her parents made. The decision to set aside the princess title did not come from the palace. It did not come from advisors or tradition. It came from two parents who looked at the world their daughter was about to grow up in and made a choice based entirely on love. Prince Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, had watched closely what a royal title could do to a young life. They had seen how the press followed royal children. They had seen how a name alone could turn an ordinary school day into a media event. They had seen how difficult it was for young royals to simply be children. They did not want that for their daughter. So, they made a quiet but powerful decision. Lady Louise would grow up without the princess title. She would use a simpler style of address, one that would not instantly signal to the world that she was different from other children. She would go to school, make friends, and build a life without the weight of a royal label pressing down on her from birth. This was not a common choice among the royal family. Most members with the right to a title use it. It is expected. It is tradition. Stepping away from that is unusual, and it required a kind of confidence and clarity that not every royal parent has shown. For years, the approach worked exactly as her parents had hoped. Lady Louise grew up largely out of the headlines. She was occasionally seen at royal events, standing quietly alongside her family. But she was never a constant fixture in the press. She was never the subject of daily royal coverage. Her childhood remained, by royal standards, remarkably private. But as she grew older, something began to shift. The quiet young woman who had spent her life outside the spotlight was growing into someone that the royal family and the public were beginning to pay much closer attention to. And the title that had been waiting patiently in the background was still there, ready for the moment she decided what to do with it. Growing up away from the royal spotlight. While other young royals were being photographed at public events and discussed in royal columns, Lady Louise Windsor was doing something far more ordinary. She was simply growing up. She attended school like any other young person. She built friendships that had nothing to do with palace life. She developed interests and passions that were rarely discussed in newspapers or on royal websites. For the most part, the press left her alone, and her family worked quietly to keep it that way. But one passion did occasionally bring her into public view. Lady Louise developed a deep love for carriage driving. This is a competitive equestrian sport that requires skill, patience, and a strong connection with horses. It is also a sport that carried very personal meaning within her family. Her grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, was known to love the activity deeply. When Lady Louise appeared at events connected to carriage driving, observers noticed something about her. She was calm, she was focused. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that reminded many people of her grandmother. Those small public appearances told a story without words. Here was a young woman who had grown up away from the spotlight, but had not grown up disconnected from royal values. She understood tradition. She respected it. She simply chose to live it privately rather than publicly. As she moved through her teenage years and into early adulthood, admiration for her began to grow slowly and steadily. People who followed the royal family closely started to take notice. Commentary about her thoughtful nature and her grounded personality began appearing more frequently. She was not chasing attention, but attention was beginning to find her anyway. And underneath all of this, there was something that many observers had quietly noted for years. The bond between Lady Louise and her grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, appeared to be something genuinely special. A connection built not just on family, but on shared values, shared interests, and a shared way of moving through the world. That bond would turn out to matter far more than anyone outside the family fully understood at the time. A royal grandmother's influence. Some relationships within a family shape a person in ways that are difficult to put into words. The relationship between Lady Louise Windsor and her grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, appeared to be exactly that kind of bond. From an early age, Lady Louise was observed at royal gatherings standing close to the Queen, not in a formal or ceremonial way, but in the easy, natural way of someone who genuinely enjoyed the company of an older family member. Those who watched these moments closely described a warmth between the two that felt unforced and real. Queen Elizabeth II was known to value certain qualities above almost everything else: quiet dedication, a strong sense of duty, the ability to serve without seeking praise or recognition. She had little patience for those who treated royal life as a performance. In Lady Louise, many observers felt the Queen saw those same qualities reflected back. Both shared a love for horses and the countryside. Both approached public life with restraint and dignity. Both seemed to understand that the most meaningful royal work is often done without fanfare or headlines. As Lady Louise moved into her teenage years, the similarities between grandmother and granddaughter became a frequent topic among royal watchers. Writers and commentators began pointing to her as someone who embodied the kind of steady, grounded royal spirit that Queen Elizabeth II had represented for decades. This was significant in a royal family that was changing rapidly, with debates about modernization and the future shape of the monarchy playing out in public. Lady Louise represented something quietly powerful, a connection to the values of the past combined with the energy of a younger generation. Those who followed royal affairs began to wonder whether this young woman, who had spent her whole life outside the intense spotlight, might one day step into a much more visible role. But before that question could be answered, something happened that changed everything about the royal family almost overnight. The woman at the center of it all, the anchor around whom so much of royal life had been organized for decades, was gone. The moment the monarchy changed forever. On the 8th of September, 2022, Queen Elizabeth II passed away at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. The news moved across the world within minutes. For many people, regardless of whether they followed the royal family closely or not, the moment carried an enormous weight. Queen Elizabeth II had been on the throne for 70 years. For most people alive today, she was the only monarch they had ever known. Inside the royal family, the loss was something far more personal than a change of reign. For Lady Louise Windsor, it was the loss of a grandmother she had been genuinely close to. A woman who had shaped her values, shared her interests, and offered a model of what royal life at its most dignified could look like. The days and weeks that followed the Queen's death brought sweeping changes to the structure of the monarchy. Titles shifted, responsibilities moved to new hands. The family that had arranged itself around one central figure for so long now had to find a new shape. King Charles III stepped forward as the new monarch. His approach to the role would quickly make clear that he had a specific vision for what the monarchy should look like going forward. Leaner, more focused. Built around a smaller number of working royals carrying greater responsibility. This vision had immediate consequences for every member of the royal family. Some found their roles expanding, others found themselves further from the center of royal life. And for younger members of the family, the question of what role they might play in this new version of the monarchy became suddenly very relevant. Lady Louise Windsor, who had spent her entire life living quietly outside the spotlight, was now living in a monarchy that was actively thinking about its future. A monarchy that needed dependable, grounded, respected voices to help carry it forward. The title that had been sitting unused since her birth was still there, and the question of what she might do with it was no longer just a matter of personal preference. It was becoming something much bigger than that. King Charles' plan for the future. When King Charles III took the throne, he did not waste time making his intentions known. He had spent decades thinking about what the monarchy should look like in a modern world. He had watched public opinion shift. He had seen the debates about relevance, cost, and purpose play out in newspapers and online, and he had formed a clear view about what needed to change. His vision centered on one idea: a smaller, more focused monarchy. Rather than a large extended family, all carrying royal titles and drawing on public resources, King Charles wanted a tighter inner circle, fewer senior royals, but those who remained would carry greater responsibility and play a more active role in public life. This was not just an idea floated in private conversations. Steps were taken early in his reign that made the direction of travel very clear. Certain family members saw their roles reduced. Others were brought closer to the center of royal duties. The message was consistent. In this new version of the monarchy, every working royal needed to justify their place through genuine public service. For those watching from outside the family, this shift raised an interesting question about the generation below the king. About the younger royals who had grown up during the final years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign and were now entering adulthood in a monarchy, being actively reshaped. Lady Louise Windsor sat in a particularly interesting position within all of this. She was young. She was respected within the family. She carried the quiet dignity that King Charles himself values. And she had spent her life building a grounded, private identity that gave her a kind of credibility that more publicly exposed royals sometimes struggle to maintain. Those who follow the royal family closely began to point to her as someone who could play a meaningful role in the king's vision for the future. Not as a celebrity royal, not as a headline-chasing public figure, but as a steady, trusted presence, carrying out genuine work. The only thing standing between Lady Louise and a more visible royal role was a title she had never used. A title that, as it turned out, had been quietly waiting for her since the very day she was born. A title that was always waiting. The title of princess had never been taken away from Lady Louise Windsor. That is the part of this story that many people find surprising when they first hear it. There was no moment where someone decided she should not be a princess. There was no formal process that removed the honor from her. The rules established by King George, the fifth back in 1917, remained in place throughout her entire life. Under those rules, she was a princess from the moment she took her first breath. But a title that is never used fades into the background. It becomes a technicality rather than a reality. And for over 2 decades, that is exactly what happened. The princess title sat quietly in the background of her life, unused and largely undiscussed, while Lady Louise built an identity entirely her own. As she moved through her teenage years and into adulthood, royal observers began raising the question more openly. Would she ever choose to use the title? Was there a moment coming when Lady Louise Windsor would decide to become Princess Louise? The palace never applied pressure. Her parents had always been clear that the choice belonged to their daughter alone. Whatever she decided, the family would support it fully. This was important, because accepting a princess title is not simply a matter of updating a name on official documents. It signals something. It tells the world how a person sees their place within the royal structure. It opens doors to greater public responsibility, while at the same time closing the door a little further on the kind of quiet, private life her parents had worked so hard to protect. For a young woman who had grown up valuing exactly that privacy, the decision was never going to be a simple one. Royal watchers continued to speculate. Some felt she would quietly keep things as they were. Others believed that the changing shape of the monarchy under King Charles made it increasingly likely she would step forward. Then came the moment that ended all the speculation. An announcement emerged that confirmed what many had started to hope for. But the full story behind that announcement, and what it really meant for the future of Lady Louise, was more layered than the headlines suggested. The personal choice behind the title. Accepting a royal title sounds simple from the outside, but for Lady Louise Windsor, the decision was anything but simple. It was personal, it was layered, and it required her to think carefully about what kind of life she wanted to live going forward. Growing up without the princess title had given her something genuinely rare within the royal family. It had given her space to form her own identity, build real friendships, and move through the world without the constant weight of public expectation pressing down on her. Choosing to accept the title meant agreeing to give up some of that space. A princess carries visibility. She carries public duties. She carries the expectation that she will appear at official engagements, represent the crown, and conduct herself at all times with the understanding that the world is watching. These are not small things to take on, especially for someone who had spent her entire life deliberately stepping back from exactly that kind of attention. There was also the question of timing. Lady Louise was at a stage of life where big personal decisions were already being made. She was thinking about her future, her independence, and the direction she wanted her adult life to take. Adding a major royal commitment into that picture required genuine reflection. Those close to the family understood that she did not rush this decision. She thought it through carefully. She considered what the title would mean in practical terms. She considered what it would mean personally. She weighed the responsibilities that would come with it against the life she had built without it. At the same time, the world around her was changing. The monarchy was evolving. The people closest to her, including her parents and King Charles himself, were reshaping what royal life could look like. And slowly, a sense of purpose began to emerge. A feeling that stepping forward was not a sacrifice of the life she had built, but a natural extension of it. The values she had been raised with, quiet dedication, genuine service, and deep respect for royal tradition, were the same values that the role of princess would ask her to carry publicly. The question was no longer whether she was ready. The question was what the announcement would actually say, and how the royal world would respond when it finally came. The announcement that changed everything. When the announcement finally came, it moved fast. Royal news outlets picked it up within minutes. Social media followed immediately after. The name Lady Louise Windsor was trending across platforms before most people had even read the full details of what had been confirmed. The news was exactly what the speculation had pointed toward. Connected to King Charles III and delivered through official channels, the announcement confirmed that Lady Louise had accepted the HRH title. She would now be recognized as a princess. For those who had followed her story closely over the years, the moment carried a particular kind of weight. This was not a young royal who had grown up chasing the spotlight. This was someone who had spent decades living quietly, building a grounded identity, and carefully considering what she wanted her life to look like. The fact that she had chosen to step forward made the announcement feel meaningful in a way that went beyond the title itself. Across royal forums and comment sections, the reaction from the public was overwhelmingly warm. People who had admired her quiet dignity for years expressed genuine excitement. Others who were less familiar with her story began searching her name and discovering for the first time the unusual path she had taken to reach this moment. Some pointed to her likeness with Queen Elizabeth II. Others noted how closely her decision aligned with King Charles's vision for a leaner, more purposeful monarchy. Many simply expressed that they felt she had earned the title in a way that felt authentic rather than automatic. But not everyone was reading the announcement the same way. Within the wider royal conversation, questions were already forming about what this change would mean in practical terms. What duties would she take on? How visible would she become? Would she remain the quietly grounded figure the public had come to admire, or would the pressures of a princess title gradually reshape who she was? The headlines told one version of the story. But inside the royal family, away from the cameras and the comment sections, the response to Lady Louise's decision carried a different kind of meaning entirely. And it started with the two people who had protected her from this spotlight for her entire life. How the royal family responded. The people who understood this moment most deeply were not the royal commentators. They were not the journalists who had covered the announcement or the social media accounts that had tracked every detail of her journey. They were Prince Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. The two people who had made the original decision, more than 2 decades earlier, to give their daughter a childhood free from royal titles and public pressure. For them, this moment was not just news. It was the conclusion of a long and deliberate journey. When they had chosen to register their daughter simply as Lady Louise Windsor all those years ago, they had done so knowing the title would always be available to her. They had never taken anything away. They had simply held the door open and let her walk through it in her own time, on her own terms. Now she had walked through it. Those close to the family described the atmosphere, among those who knew her best, as one of quiet pride. Not the loud, public kind of celebration that sometimes surrounds royal announcements. Something more understated, more personal. The kind of pride that comes from watching someone you love make a decision that feels entirely right for who they are. Prince Edward and Sophie had always maintained that the choice belonged to Lady Louise alone. They had never pushed her toward the title or away from it. That consistency, held for over 2 decades, made this moment carry an even greater sense of integrity. King Charles III, for his part, was understood to welcome the decision warmly. It aligned neatly with his vision for the future of the monarchy. A trusted, grounded, younger royal stepping forward to take on a more visible role was exactly the kind of development his vision had been building toward. The title was no longer just a technicality waiting in the background. It was now real. It was active. It belonged to someone who had chosen it freely and fully understood what it meant to carry it. But what happens next is where the story becomes truly interesting. Because the princess title does not just change a name, it opens a door to a role that could shape the future of the British monarchy in ways that are only just beginning to become clear. A new princess and the future of the monarchy. Lady Louise Windsor has always been someone who moves quietly. She does not rush, she does not seek attention, she does not make decisions without thought. Every step she has taken through her public life has carried that same sense of careful, grounded intention. And now, with the HRH title accepted and the princess recognition confirmed, she steps into a new chapter carrying exactly those same qualities with her. The timing matters. The British monarchy is in a period of genuine transition. King Charles III is actively reshaping what royal life looks like, what it asks of those who carry its titles, and what it offers to a public that is watching more critically than ever before. In that environment, the arrival of a new princess who brings credibility, authenticity, and a deep personal connection to royal tradition is significant. Lady Louise is not arriving as a figurehead. She is arriving as someone who has spent her entire life quietly preparing, not through formal training or public appearances, but through the values her parents instilled in her and the steady, private way she has always chosen to live. Those who follow the royal family closely believe her role could grow meaningfully in the years ahead. She may take on official engagements. She may represent the crown at home and abroad. She may become one of the more visible faces of a monarchy that is working hard to remain relevant and respected in a changing world. But perhaps what matters most is something harder to measure than titles or duties. Lady Louise represents a kind of continuity, a thread that runs from Queen Elizabeth II through the values her family carried quietly for decades and into the future that King Charles is now building. She is the product of parents who chose something different, a grandmother who recognized something special, and a monarchy that gave her the space to become who she was meant to be. The spotlight she once lived so carefully outside of is now hers to step into, and if the life she has lived so far is any indication of the royal she is becoming, the British monarchy may have found in her something it needs very much right now, a princess worth watching. What do you think? Should she take the title or stay as she is? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, like this video, and subscribe for more incredible stories just like this one.